Last week at the tail end of our examples and videos and things, I talked about solving quadratics, talked about looking for a root or a solution or a zero or x-intercept, whatever you want to call it, and how we can graph those to find that x-intercept. But sometimes we end up in the last example that I did later on in the week, I showed you that sometimes you come across x-intercepts that are not on a whole number, and so without the help of some calculations you can't really tell exactly what the point is. You know it might be between 1 and 2, but you don't know exactly what that number would be where it crosses the x-axis. And so we're going to show how to do some solutions using factoring, which is what we've been working on for weeks now. And so this will actually allow us to do that. So I'm going to show you just one example on this, and then I'm going to go into some examples on a sheet of notebook paper so we have plenty of room to work. So the first thing that we do in our steps is we're going to set the quadratic equation equal to 0. Okay, so that means I'm going to have it in standard form still, x squared plus 3x minus 10, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. Okay, then we're going to factor what we have. Okay, so when we factor it, remember we're looking for two numbers that multiply to equal a times c, so in this case 1 times negative 10, and add to equal b, which is 3. So two numbers multiply to equal negative 10, add to equal 3. So in this case it's going to be let's see, 5 and 3 maybe, 5 and, let's see, nope, that won't work, 5 and negative 2. If I multiply 5 times negative 2, I'm going to get negative 10. If I add them together I get positive 3. Okay, so that works. So when we do this, we're going to split it, x squared plus 5x minus 2x minus 10, and then we group it and factor. So we end up with x plus 5, and then negative 2 x plus 5, and I'm just doing the fast version of this because we've already covered how to do this, and if you're needing help you can go back. I think it's week 2, week 1 actually. This is week 1 material backwards FOIL, so you could go back and kind of familiarize yourself with that. And so we end up with x plus 5, which is the common factor, and x minus 2, which is the factor that is the leftovers. Okay, so here we have it factored. Alright, so factor it. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So we're going to have x plus 5 is equal to 0 and x minus 2 is equal to 0. And we solve. So we subtract 5, x is equal to negative 5, add 2, x is equal to 2. And so our final answer here is that x is equal to negative 5 and 2, meaning that at the points negative 5, 0, and 2, 0, we're going to come across our solution for this quadratic equation. So set each factor equal to 0, solve it, and then write your answer using curly braces. So I'm going to do another couple of examples, but we're going to do them with a little bit of extra room because honestly that's just not enough room for us to be able to work. So let's look at this example here. Alright, so y is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 3. So our first step is to set it equal to 0. Okay, which it's already been done. Okay, I just kind of went ahead and did that for you. So x squared plus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. And the second is to factor. Second step is to factor. Okay, so we are looking for two numbers that multiply to equal 1 times 3, which is 3, and add to equal 4. So if I multiply 3 and 1, I get 3, and if I add them I get 4. So that works. So we're going to split this into 3x and 1x, and then we're going to group it and pull this out. So x plus 3, and then there's nothing to pull out here, no greatest common factor, so we end up with this. And of course our common factor is x plus 3, and our leftover is x plus 1. At this point, you probably want to go ahead and check and make sure that you factored it correctly. So very quickly I can do that. X times x is x squared, x times 1 is x times 3x is 3x, 3 times 1 is 3, and we have what we started with. So yes, these are the two factors that I'm going to use. Okay, so step 3, I take the factors x plus 3 and I set it equal to 0, and x plus 1 and I set it equal to 0, and I solve for x. So I subtract 3, x is equal to negative 3, and I subtract 1, x is equal to negative 1. Okay, and so what I end up with here is a final answer of x is equal to negative 3 and negative 1. And of course I can always check myself by plugging this into the calculator, and so we'll do that very quickly. Let me just plug it in here. We're going to put in y is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 3. Graph it. And yes, it looks like we cross at negative 3 and at negative 1. So that's exactly what we want. That is the correct answer, and we are finished with a problem like that. Okay, I'm going to do one more example and then I will create a couple more videos with extra examples for you. Okay, so if we look at this next example, we have y equals x squared plus 10x plus 25. So step 1, x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 0. And then from there I am going to factor. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to equal 25 and add to equal 10. So in this case that's 5 and 5, because 5 times 5 is 25, 5 plus 5 is 10. So I'm going to split this into 5 and 5. So x squared plus 5x plus 5x plus 25. We're going to group it. So find your greatest common factor. I'm going to pull out x in this case, and we're left with x plus 5. And in this case, I'm going to pull out 5, and you're left with x plus 5. And so here's your common factor, and here are your leftovers. Okay, so x plus 5 and x plus 5. If I multiply those back out, I'm going to end up with what I started with, so those are the correct factors to use. Step 3 is to set the factors equal to 0, so x plus 5 is equal to 0, x plus 5 is equal to 0, and solve for x. Subtract 5, x is equal to negative 5, subtract 5, and x is equal to negative 5. So in this case, I end up with an equation or a solution where x is equal to negative 5, and I don't have to rewrite it twice because it looks like there's only one solution to this. So we can use our calculators and check. So we're going to do x squared plus 10x plus 25, graph it, and sure enough, that's exactly correct. It only touches there in that one spot, so it only has one solution of x equals negative 5. And remember, I'm putting my answers in those curly braces because a lot of times there is more than one answer, so we're writing it as a solution set. Okay, so I'll do a couple more videos with a few more examples just to give you plenty of options to look through these and a few different things that you might see that might be helpful. And if you need anything else, just let me know.